Tune in to the Fintech Files for exclusive interviews with fintech executives and thought leaders. We will talk about how the industry will overcome the crisis that has marked the start of the decade, how it can be part of the solution, and how the financial world will evolve in the next decade. This is your host, George Alaferis from Arama.
In today's episode, I'm talking to Colin Slight, the MD and co-founder of the Realization Group, a marketing and communications consultancy supporting firms at the cutting edge of financial markets technology. In his authentic northern accent, Colin will give us some honest truths about trying to sell marketing and dealing with long and complex sales cycles, and a lot more. Colin, welcome to the show.
Hi, George.
Great to have you on board. So as we both speak while in confinement, can we start by asking you, where are you confined and what's your working from home setup?
I'm confined in my home in North Yorkshire. I live in a village called Danby Wisk, which is near Northallerton. And my working from home setup is, I've been working from home for many years now. So I have a reasonably well-appointed office here at home with my big 21.5-inch iMac, and my shelves and filing cabinets and printers and all that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty well off.
Great. So let's get into it. And the first questions are about your role and your career. So how did you get into finance and now fintech?
It was through working with Melanie Budden, my co-founder. So we started the business back in 2002, but we worked together prior to that. And I'd never been a fintech sort of finance guy, but Melanie had always had a keen interest in that sector. So when we started the Realization Group, we weren't particularly finance focused, but through her network and connections and good work in business development, we started picking up more and more customers in that sector. And after a while, it just seems to make sense to focus on that. So really, we've focused on this niche exclusively since about 2006.
No, okay, all right. So, when you look from outside, you feel like, you guys have really you've been into this niche of financial markets for a while, but I thought it looks so much in your DNA that I thought it was forever and from day one, right?
Well, I'm a biz dev guy, right? And I was a technical, application developer early in my career, and then I got into sales by going out on sales calls with the sales guys doing pre-sales. And I just found out I liked being client-facing rather than being in an office developing code. So for me, it was working with clients, helping them to solve whatever issues they've got by selling the products that I had to take to market. And is finance in my DNA? Well, maybe, I've been working in the sector since 2006. That's 14 years. So I kind of feel like I'm part of this world now.
And can you tell us a bit about, let's start by telling us a bit, more about this niche that you're into and what does the company do to serve this niche? Okay,
so the niche really, if you were to put more definition around it, is we call it financial markets. It's really anything to do with the business of financial trading, trade execution, exchange operations, the whole landscape of post-trade services. It is a niche, but it's a very big niche. There is a lot of players in this, so it's a big market to be in. But it's an interesting market once you get to understand it. And there's a lot of very different organisations who play in this particular niche. So there's a lot of variety in there too.
And just for people who may not be fully familiar with this, could you tell us some examples of, what your clients do? You can name them or just, say different talk about their sectors.
What our clients do. So, if you think of it in terms of like what we traditionally call a tech stack. So at the bottom of the stack, you've got the manufacturers and processors who execute the trades. You've got the telcos, whose wires carry the trades. You've got the infrastructure guys. you got the data centers who house the infrastructure, and you've got the application developers, you've got the product vendors, then you've got the professional services suppliers, the consultants, and so on and so forth, and then you've got the regulated firms. So regulated firms both on buy side and sell side. So if you're looking at buy side, you're looking at the four niche funds, small niche funds, all the way up to the big asset managers, and then all around that.
It's quite amazing because from an external point of view, or from people who are not in the business, it seems like, when you talk fintech, there's familiar names that come to mind, which are typically the B2C fintech. And then you tell about this whole ecosystem, which not many people have in mind unless they are in the business, but it's huge, right? And there's so much happening into that space. And I guess it's also an exciting space in terms of growth, in terms of development. So what do you think is what's for you the most exciting thing about operating in that space as an agency?
Yeah, well, I guess you're right, and I should probably step back a little bit and talk about why sometimes we struggle a little bit with sector designation because, for me, financial services is a big market, and you've got retail finance, and then you've got financial markets, and you've got insurance. We are very much, we're B2B financial markets, right? And so we're not talking about the early stage fintechs coming in and disrupting the market and stealing market share and all that kind of stuff. We're talking about working in complex B2B, long sales cycles, high value sales, and improving operational performance across a sector which is very, very complex indeed.
Yeah, sure. Because sometimes, typically those clients, they could have the deal that they do is just maybe for one client or a handful of clients, and it could be something that's services for a year or multiple years. So I guess it's a very different approach. It's a totally different approach than what we see in the B2C space. And regarding that, so it's also a very technical aspects of finance, right? So what is your biggest challenge when it comes to bring those clients who come from a technical background and you're helping them to communicate?
That's an interesting one. So I would say the biggest challenge is unrealistic expectations about how quickly things can be made happen, particularly from a technological perspective. You can have the greatest technology in the world, it can have the greatest features and functionality and all that kind of stuff, but just having great technology doesn't make you a winner immediately. And when you first enter a market, you've got to build trust, you've got to build relationships, you've got to build what we call communities of interest, people who are interested in what you do and how you do it. And that doesn't happen quickly. And when you're in a niche where a lot of people know each other and they're already established players, and you've got to differentiate yourself, then that takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes process, and you've got to follow the process, and you've got to stay in the game, and you don't just quickly come in and start, put in place a lead generation program which is going to deliver results in weeks. It's not going to happen. You've got to be prepared to roll your sleeves up. Just nothing's changed. We're in the sales game. You just got to work the territory. You've got to work the patch. You've got to build your reputation. It takes time. So unrealistic expectations about how quickly things can be made happen. That is a challenge.
Okay. And we definitely should talk about the process as well. But so how do you manage that? How do you lower manage the expectation when people start coming to you and maybe they're very excited and they want results tomorrow?
Okay, so how do you manage it? How you manage it?
Or how do you educate them to explain that? Yeah,
well, that's what I'm kind of like. How you do it is you don't do it. Right? You say, okay, you think this can be done in like 3 months and everything's going to be easy and it's going to be all right and all that kind of stuff. Get on with it. And then you wait and then you wait, and then eventually they figure out that it's actually not that easy, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to take time, and they need your skills and expertise and all that kind of stuff, and then they come back to you. I've got this expression that I developed a long time ago, which is never ever try and sell marketing to anybody. By that, what I mean is,
that's a good one. Yeah, I know. I didn't express it this way, but I know about that one. Yeah,
it's like they either get it or they don't. If they don't get it, you can try. You can talk till you're blue in the face, right, about why you should be doing certain things. But they don't get it. They don't get it. They only get it by trying to do it themselves and finding out it's hard and then coming back. So a typical kind of a great client for me would be somebody who's been in the market, who is a skilled marketing practitioner, who've learned the ropes. They know what needs to be done and they know how it needs to be done. They're just looking for a great partner to work with the execution.
Understood. Now that's definitely a very, very interesting aspect of marketing, and that's why it's so interesting to see how marketing agencies, or before we say that advertising agency, never make advert for themselves.
It's like, okay, so I'd like to build on that a bit. Don't try and ever sell.
Sure. No, I'd love to hear more about it.
So you go like, so you do marketing, right? Yeah. Okay. So you generate lots of leads, can you? Well, perhaps, possibly. Yeah. Well, you do marketing, right? So we got great product, we got great technology, so generate lots of leads. You go, well, okay, we can do that, but it takes time, and when we need structure, and we need process, and we need to get your messaging right, and we need to build your community of interest, and so on and so forth. And at that point, they're thinking, is this all really true, or is it just that you're just not very good at your job, because really you should be able to take my fantastic product or service and sell it easily? And at that point, like, what do? How do you prove it? You can't prove it. You can't say, well, actually, I can prove to you that it's going to take time and effort and process and application and all that kind of stuff, but you can't prove it. So the only way you can prove it is you try and do it without doing it that way and fail, and then realise that you've got to do it.
Yeah, and we all hope there were shortcuts, and I guess we all try to find shortcuts, but the reality is that, and I guess what's working for a marketing agency is also applies to the clients themselves. So you're aligned in some way.
Well, let me phrase it in another way then. So when we first set up the realization group, we weren't a marketing company, we were biz dev, and we would go to early stage firms. This is before we decided to specialize in this niche, and we go, we can help you with revenue generation programs. And we knew we could do that because we had a track record in previous businesses of doing it. So we go, all right. So you go in and you start work, and you take the product or service and you get it out there. And then you'd find out there were things wrong with their message, or things wrong with their collateral, or their pricing versus their competition, or their features and functionality versus their competition, or just simply the territory that they were working in, or they got their buyer persona wrong, or something like that. So you go back and you go like, well, we can help you with revenue generation, but there are certain things to do with your marketing that you have to address before we can be really effective. Now, at that point, you've created yourself a problem because you've said, we can help you with revenue generation. But now you're coming back and you're telling me there's all these things wrong with my marketing that are going to prevent me from doing this. I go, yeah. So at that point, they're going, is this the truth, or are you really just not very good at your job? So we changed our model. So we start going out to our clients and say, our prospects, and say, we can help you with revenue generation, but before we do that, we've reserved the right to do due diligence on your marketing. So they go, all right, fair enough. So we do due diligence on the marketing. We do a marketing gap analysis, and we come back to them and say, so here's what you need to do to your marketing to help you facilitate great revenue generation. And they'd look at it, and if we've done our job right, which we usually have, they'd go, actually, we can't argue with that. Everything you said is correct. So then they say, all right, well, you've told us what's wrong, you fix it. So then we have to become a marketing company. Because then we have to go out and we have to find the messaging guys, we have to build the relationships with the journalists, we have people who build websites, we have to find the designers, and next thing you know, we're marketing.
No, very interesting. I really love that example.
We started from BizDev, and we were all right at it. We were all right at it. We didn't fail. But we started to report back the marketing issues to our prospects, and then we became marketing company, the other way around. And it kind of works. But it works in reverse as well. So that where we first went out and said we could do biz dev, and we found out we weren't as great at biz dev as we thought without fixing the marketing problems. Right? When people come to us and say, do biz dev, what they mean is generate me lots of leads. And we go back and say, well, in order to do that, we've got to do certain things to do with marketing. And then they have to go away and think about it for a while. And then eventually they come back, which is a very long-winded way of answering your question, which is, what do you do about making that challenge? And what you do about making that challenge is say, well, go away and try it for yourself. And when you find you're not very good at it, come back. Because you can't prove it.
No, that makes perfect sense. And to me, I also find that many of those companies in the B2B and technical side, they actually typically don't have a marketing department. They're sales generated. So I guess, I don't know if you see that as well, but I guess talking to them straight into marketing is a bit hard because, there's no such thing, right, very often at this stage, or they have the basics.
I guess I'm sounding like I'm a bit sort of, I don't know, jaded or cynical.
Not at all.
Stuff. But no, actually, it's just, I actually like all this stuff. It's just, there is no other way. You can't sell marketing. Don't try and sell marketing to people who don't get it. You've got to get it. And the thing is, we're a marketing company, right? We do this for a living. We're not a university, so we're not here to teach people. We're here to do it for them. You want to go and learn it, and you have to go and learn it somewhere else.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I love the advice. Going a bit more into details and the advice and the process that you follow, we've discussed together, I think the term was persistent communication. Is that the right term? Can you tell us a bit more about that and how, why this is part of, or if it's part of your advice, why you think this is the right approach?
It's not that there is any particular right or wrong approach. It's just that what we do talk in the realization group, we talk about persistent market communication, okay? Which just basically means being out there, right? Just being out there, or being out there constantly, right? Because you've got to be out there in the market, which means you've got to be continually communicating with the market and reminding people that you exist in a variety of different ways, whether it's putting out a press release, making a company communication, posting a blog, responding to somebody else's comment, right? Attending an event, going to a show. Just be out there and become part of that world and become part of that community and become known. Become part of the scene, make friends, become accepted. And you do that by going again and again and again and again to the market. But you just got to be clever about how you do it. And it's, you learn lessons about this stuff. So years ago, I'm talking like in the 1990s, I'm talking to a guy who's a business leader. He said, did you go to the trade show? I said, I went to the trade show. He said, we went. I'm not going again. It's why you're not going again. It's because we went there. It cost us several £1,000s. Now, how much business did we get out of it? I said, I don't know. I'm guessing none, right? He's going, yeah. So I'm not going to the stupid trade show again. I said, well, what do you expect? You only went once. Okay? And you go again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And, the business isn't done with people coming up to your stand and understanding what you do and then going away and giving you a lead and placing an order. The business is done over breakfast or around the lunches or the cocktails afterwards, and they're done because you get to know people and you get to know them and you get to know them, and eventually you get to know them and they trust you and they start giving you some stuff to do. You only go once. You're not going to get any business. And you just wasted your money. So be there, become part of a community.
So how does it work for sorry, yes.
Yeah, no, go for it. Go.
I was going to ask, so how do you bring your clients to this, because a lot of those is about them being more out there. And I guess some of this is things you can manage in-house. How do you define that? What do you just advise them and they do it? And what do you take into your own hand and you do for them?
Well, this is where once somebody gets the reason why they need to do marketing, Okay, then it's just a case of coming down to what is common sense, right? And when you explain the need of persistent market communication to people, usually they get it, which is just, and when you explain that, it's not that difficult to achieve as long as you apply yourself correctly. The other thing we talk about is not just going after prospects, but building communities of interest. Which is not just people who are going to buy your stuff, it's people who are going to be your advocates, people who are influential in the market, who, if they get to like you and what you're doing, and then they're going to recommend you to people who then also building your networks out, becoming part of a community, becoming a known quantity. So we talk about communities of interest are combinations of prospects, advocates, influencers. Advocates, people who know you, who've done business with you, who are going to say good things about you. Your influencers, the journalists, the analysts, the noteworthy consultants who know what they're talking about, who are going to testify to the effectiveness of what you do. You can build that kind of a community. It's very powerful. But if it's just going after prospects, it'll work all right, but not as well if you become a noteworthy and trusted part of a community. That's how you crack it.
And this sounds wonderful, being out there online, offline, but how do you manage the resources? Or is that exactly one of the problems you solve for your clients? Because some of them might have resources, some of them might be fairly small teams that, there's only that number of people that they can bring to the ground. So how do you adjust to that?
It's back in the old days, when I first started in sales, it's like 1991. It was really very, very easy to get face-to-face meetings with people because there was no internet and there were no answer phones on and all that stuff. So people would see you just to get information. They'd see a sales representative just to find out what was going on out there in the market, what was new, what was current, what was different. You pick up the phone, you call somebody, you say, I've got some innovation which is relevant to you and I want to talk to you about it. They said, come and see me. And so that was great. So you met people face to face, and if you got on and you understood what they needed and what you had was relevant to them, you'd keep the conversation going and you'd end up selling them some stuff. Right? And nothing's changed. You still got to get in front of some people and sell them some stuff. Right? But now people don't want to see you just because they want some information, because they get that information from other places. And this is well understood. Right? So what you're doing is you're just rehearsing conversations that you would have with somebody face to face, but you're digitizing those conversations in the form of videos or blogs or podcasts or this. Right? It's digital conversations. But just imagine you're talking to a prospect and you're having that conversation. Build those relationships digitally. You don't have enough human resources to be out there doing all this stuff face to face, so you have to do it digitally. So all we're doing, when you say, how do you do this? Well, people who are running businesses, are quite often they know exactly what they want to say, and they know how they want to say it, and they know the persona that they want to project and all that kind of stuff. So the information's there, the content's there. All we've got to do is get it out of their heads and digitize it and broadcast it in the most effective ways. So if you're talking to smart people and know what they're doing and know what they want to say and the relationships they want to build, you talk to them, you record the output, you finesse it with your own thoughts and your own insights, you bring other people into the conversation, and then it's a case of using the digital channels that are available out there to broadcast it. Well, that's just technology, right? But what's in people's heads is what's in people's heads. Our job is to get it out of their heads, digitize it and broadcast it.
Very interesting. And that brings me to another, let's say timely issues in terms of the crisis we're going through and managing in terms of crisis. And one of the things we tend to see is accelerated digitalization, right? For everything, from the way we work to the way we study to everything like that. So how do you think this will affect, is there a long-term impact? How do you think this will affect, the medium-term outlook? And do you think there's a change in the long term?
How will it affect the medium-term outlook is that, and we're already seeing it, is that firms out there who've got something to sell are having to work harder at digitising those conversations because the face-to-face meetings aren't taking place. So you just to stay in the game, you can't go dark, you can't go quiet. You still got to be out there. You've got to work harder at being out there digitally. Long term, it's not sustainable because in this complex B2B environment that we operate in, then it's going to be pretty hard to actually conclude complex transactions without being face-to-face with people. Because sales, it's business. Business isn't about logic, it's about politics, and it's about emotion. There's no logic in business. It's all about feeling. And so ultimately, we've got to get back to a point where we are, as far as is possible, face-to-face with the people we want to build relationships with.
Yeah, sure. And eventually this face-to-face might be, I hope soon it's ending, but maybe it's a Zoom to Zoom, but that's still a face-to-face thing, right? Where people dedicate the time one-to-one. And that it takes a longer time to get there. So I guess that's where the digitalization and the conversation beforehand and warming up the lead comes in.
I'd be interested to see just how far digitalization can replace face-to-face, and my feeling is that probably is not possible. When you are going to trust an organisation enough to place your business with them, you've got to get to know them. And this is, and the main way you get to know them is through the business development practitioners that you get to know over time, which is, can I trust this person to represent me properly inside their organisation? How are they going to react to me when something goes wrong? Are you still going to be there when I need you in an emergency? To what extent can I rely on you to fulfill your obligations to me? Do I trust you?
Right. So until we manage to shake hands digitally and tap on your back when needed digitally, we still need this proper face-to-face.
Yeah, I'll go for a drink, I'll go to football, or I'll go to the theatre or something like that. I struggle with this idea that this thing that compliance people call client entertainment, taking somebody out somewhere, buying them something, spending some time socially, getting a bottle of wine, going to the rugby, going to the cricket, going to the theatre. That's, okay, so people enjoy it and they get something out of it, and there's a budgetary exposure, and there has to be some limits as to what it is. But nevertheless, you don't spend time, you can't know somebody unless you spend some time socially with them. Not very well, anyway. So is it protecting the reputation of the business by putting degrees of compliance around that stuff? Or actually is what you're doing is just getting in the way of your business development practitioners doing their job well? It's an open-ended.
All right. If we look ahead, do you think there's going to be big developments happening, either not necessarily in the field of marketing, but maybe in the field of technology that are going to be game changers? There's so many changes ahead, but what would be the big thing for you in the 2020s?
Oh, it's easy. That's just the rapid adoption of robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, ways of doing stuff. We've already seen this technology exists, but it hasn't been widely adopted. The reason it hasn't been widely adopted is because, well, let's take a step back in this. You've got firms who have, in the finance sector, who've made a fabulous contribution to GDP, to the tax take that funds our lives in the form of profits leading to dividends, employment, so on and so forth. And perhaps that work got a little bit out of hand, so it's become highly regulated, probably quite correctly, given things that happened in 2008. But then this is just the finance sector. It's all over the place, but let's just talk about finance. And then we get the trend towards outsourcing, moving your certain parts of your operation offshore where it's cheaper. So we can maintain those levels of profits that our stakeholders are demanding and that our governments are demanding. And that's worked for a while, taking advantage of low-cost resource, low-cost labour, globalisation. But now we've had a bit of a shock because all of a sudden we found out our offshore organisations aren't necessarily as available to us as we want them to be because we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and that's been a wake-up call. And our international logistics chains aren't as solid as they used to be. And our organisations are exposed to massive points of failure as a consequence of things that aren't under our control, not being accessible to us. So there'll probably be some kind of a reaction, which is that we start to bring some of that offshore stuff back onshore. And we'll probably look to shorten some of those supply chains by bringing them closer to home. But when we do that, then we're going to find that our costs are going to go up. And that's going to hit us with reduction in profits. And that's going to affect our shareholders and our stakeholders and people who depend on us, because we won't be generating that cash. And so how else do we drive up these efficiencies and these profits and keep ourselves out there? That's going to be through a more rapid adoption of automation and robotics and so on and so forth. And this just isn't in our sector, it's everywhere. And then there'll be consequences as a result of that happening, socially and otherwise. But so where do I see it going? I see rapid adoption of automation, robotics, and so on and so forth. It's just going to happen. And it's going to be speeded up as a consequence of what's happened in recent months.
Right, yeah, and it's something, as we've worked together on a few projects, this is definitely something that we've heard more than once, right? Actually, all in every sector, in every type of industry.
It was already happening, George, but it just wasn't happening as fast as it could have done, because there was always an easy automation, or always an easy option to reduce costs by going offshore. But that's not so easy anymore. So assuming we come out of this at the other end with an economy that's still intact and functional, then we're going to see a lot of emphasis placed on doing things differently in that way.
Sure. Well, that's a great concluding note. I still have a few questions which are quick fire questions to finish. What's your hidden talent, or not so hidden?
My hidden talent is that over the last 18 years since I moved to North Yorkshire, I have become expert in the area of pasture management. I know an enormous amount around how to maintain acres and acres of grass. And the reason I know that is because when I moved up here, I moved into a 7-acre small holding, and I had sheep and horses and cows and various other forms of livestock, and learned that grass does not look after itself. It requires nurturing and attention and skill and chemicals and other forms of effort. And I'm pretty good at it now. So yeah, wow. I know how to look after grass.
Fantastic. What's the one thing or the things you couldn't do without while being confined?
Spotify.
Good one. I also have been listening to so much podcast. I know people that typically are on Netflix, but I feel like listening to stuff allows me to deal with the kids or whatever I have to do while still keeping my brain active. Great answer. A few things about what we cannot do right now, and that will be the conclusion. Your favorite place for holidays?
So every week, every year, there is a special week, which is when the Cheltenham Racing Festival takes place. And I always have a week off for that week. And I watch some of it on TV, and I go to Cheltenham and watch some of it live. And so that's my favourite holiday. And I miss it this year because of issues relating to COVID-19, which is a massive disappointment for me.
All right, yeah. So what is it? Is it going to come back? Is it postponed or cancelled?
It did actually happen this year, but for a variety of different reasons. I didn't actually go there. I watched it on TV, but I missed it. And I'm hoping that next year, we're back in a situation where I can re-engage with that particular event.
Well, that was wonderful, Colin. Thank you so much. That's all I got.
All right. Thanks, George.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to our guests who make this possible. Subscribe to never miss an episode. As this is a new broadcast, if you could give us a 5-star review on iTunes and your favorite podcast player, that would be great. Let's work together to accelerate fintech towards the 2030s.